educate yourself. If you want to be an expert in this niche or that niche or this area, then do the work, because mindset plus action is going to do the most for you in this business.
Welcome back to the Full Out Real Estate Agent. I'm your host, Mark Faris. Today, we're going to be speaking with Chantel Crisp. Chantel works in the Toronto market. Her average sale price is $1.2 million, and she does about 35 to 45 transactions a year, but she is an online specialist. She's going to be talking all about that today and how she's able to balance being a rockstar real estate broker and being a mom of three as well, and pulling it all together as well. Chantel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. Well, let's go back to your origin story. How did you get into the business?
So I got into the business in 2013. I had spent a few years after university dabbling in some different sales jobs, sales management jobs, working sort of in corporate Canada, B2B sales, managing a retail store, trying different things, trying to find my niche. I knew, though, that I really liked being an entrepreneur. When I was in university, I ran a college pro painters franchise, and that was a really great experience for me to learn how to run a business. And I learned every aspect of how to run a small business in those years, and really wasn't feeling fulfilled working for somebody else. So in that time, I was also investing in real estate already. As soon as I graduated university in 2006, I bought my first property, renovated the basement, rented it out, lived upstairs, and continued to refinance and repeat, and kind of started early on what I didn't know what to call it at the time. I was already doing like a burst strategy: buy, renovate, rent, and repeat. So as I approached the end of my 20s, I was like, okay, I'm not satisfied in these types of positions. I need to build something of my own. And all roads just sort of led to real estate. I was already in it on the investing side. I was passionate about doing sales and helping people in homes. It was just like a natural progression. And plus, I was able to be my own boss again. So it was, as soon as I got my license in 2013, I never looked back. I knew I was on the right path.
Amazing. And so take us through, you were at Zoocasa, so you were a big part of turning Zoocasa search engine into an actual brokerage, and they've been super successful. Can you take us through how you were able to, help make that transition and any lessons learned through that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I had just recently started at my first brokerage at the time, and I was about, I think, 9 months into selling real estate. I had done quite a number of sales already for my first year, but I was frustrated. I wanted to generate more leads, and I knew, coming from the sales environments I had been in, what in those environments it would take for me to, how many hours do I need to knock on doors in order to speak to this many people, in order to convert to this many transactions. Whereas in real estate, everything was just taking longer, I felt. So I was trying to figure out like a quicker way. And I realized that an old colleague of mine from College Pro, who also ran a painting franchise, had a great website called scholarhood.ca. And so I approached her and I said, hey, I would love to buy leads from you. Are you selling leads? I see that you've got this site. And one thing led to another, and we decided to partner. So I left my brokerage and joined her at Keller Williams, and we were helping people find homes in top school districts. She was really savvy in business, and she had partnered with a couple of her colleagues from, like schoolmates from Queen's University, and they had started a site called ratehub.ca. And a year later, Zoocasa, who was owned by Rogers, had come up for sale. And so RateHub attempted to purchase it with a group of investors. And so I was lucky enough to be part of that group, because scholarhood.ca was a part of that group. So fast forward, after the acquisition, there was a large team put together to take Zoocasa and turn it into a brand new site, and also turn it into a brokerage. So I became the broker of record there, sales director, and was training a lot of the agents. So it was a huge endeavor. And throughout all of that, though, I ended up getting diagnosed with cancer. and found out I was pregnant, and then had to have a bone marrow transplant. So it was like the peak of the peak of my career at the time, I thought, and then everything kind of came crashing down. So I had to take some time off, and when I came back, um, I did what I could to kind of get back in the groove, but I was just like not in the best place to be making any high level decisions on that kind of level of like medications and having a newborn at home. And it was a rough time for sure, but it took me a couple years to kind of get back into a good place. And I eventually realized that I kind of opened my eyes and felt like I was an employee again. And I was like, what just happened? Although I was still an investor behind the scenes, I wasn't having the impact that I wanted. So eventually, it led me to decide to leave the brokerage. I stayed as an investor, and then moved back to Royal LePage Signature to build my team there and grow my own personal brand. And that has given me such fulfillment again.
That's can you share what helped you get through? I mean, you're super young, like you would never know, like you look great. And so and so just go to YouTube if you're listening on and you'll see how did you, we'll say, transition through that period? I mean, you hear stories about, and if listeners out there, they might know somebody or maybe they're struggling with, I mean, a health challenge like that. How how did you overcome that? I mean, you're at the peak of your career, so so you thought at the time you were, anyways, up until that point. What helped you get through that challenging period? And what advice would you have to the listeners out there that are maybe going through a challenging period in their lives?
I would say mindset. I was pretty firm, like I was going to be just fine. And I was just frustrated that I had to go through all of this, this terrible journey to get to the other side. It was frustrating because I was kind of at the point where I was sort of working myself to the bone. I was working a lot, around the clock, really just like pushing myself to be successful quicker, faster. Let's get, you know, everything done today. I have a high sense of urgency just generally as a person. So I like everything done today or yesterday. Um, so I mean, that kind of gives you an, an idea of like how much I was going. And so when I found out I was pregnant, it was amazing, but I was not I didn't slow down, that's for sure. I just kept going. So I think there was a lot of things going on there that I was probably not living the best lifestyle health wise. Although
Hmm.
I was like eating quite healthy because I was pregnant, I was really working myself, and that my level of stress was quite high. Um, but I also didn't want to give up what was in front of me. Like I was so excited to be a part of that opportunity that I didn't know how to shut it off. And I think looking back, I probably, all things considered, if I was living a more like stress-free lifestyle, maybe I could have prevented it, but I think it was inevitable. I think
Hmm.
one of those things that's just, it just happens. So
Mm.
basically what happened is I had a mutation in my genes occur where it was like chromosome 9 and chromosome 22 mutated, connected, and started multiplying, and it turned into leukemia. So I had acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and they discovered it actually while I was pregnant. So I was about 7.5 months pregnant, and I'll never forget. So it was December 11th, 2015. I was in the middle of 5 deals that week, right before Christmas. And I'm sitting in the hospital bed. I had to stay there overnight to do a they do like a bone marrow test where they put a needle into your bone and they pull out the marrow, put it under a magnifying glass to see if there's any cancer there. And I thought for sure, like, no, I don't have cancer. Like, I feel fine. I had some bruising and, some symptoms, but I was pregnant. So I wasn't sure if that was because I was pregnant. But I remember being on a call. We were in the middle of a renovation of our home in Toronto. We had just done a big extension, and my husband was like sitting on the phone with the city councilor trying to deal with stuff we were having going on with our neighbor giving a hard time to finish one side of the house. um, And then like 9 doctors walk in the room to give me the results. And I thought, I got to
Oh
call you
man.
back. Like
Oh,
they don't have good news. Like I could see the somber look in their face. And so, yeah, like I quickly had to pivot my entire life. Everything stopped. My son had to be born right away. And luckily he was fine. Like health wise, he was 6 weeks early. He went into the NICU. Um, and he grew and he was okay, and I checked into the oncology ward and started chemotherapy. If I didn't start right away, I only would have had 3 or 4 months to live, so I had to start right away. Yeah.
yeah. It's were you on your own when they came in and told you?
No, luckily I was with my husband, and he's been a
Okay, he
huge
was there.
support.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he's been incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and having like a supportive spouse there through that period, that must have been like such a blessing to have him there at the same time. Such a surprise. We actually had, I haven't talked about it on the podcast, but we actually had a team member that he's in his like mid 30s, young guy, beautiful, and he was our culture award winner. We every year on our team we give away a culture award, and he was always up number, like he was either one or two, and he he had reached out, and he actually had said that he was diagnosed, and so he had a pain in his knee, and then it was his hip, and then he went and he kept going to the chiropractor and he couldn't figure out why, and he's tough guy, just kind of putting it off and putting it off, and then finally he went in and they found it, and I went to visit him, and they had done some further tests because he didn't know how deep how extent it was, but uh, when I was with him, when I was visiting him, the doctor actually had come over, and he'd said the results had just can't come in, and it's actually spread. And I was there with him when he told them that, and it was like, the doctor, they communicated as best they can, which is just, it's probably horrible for them to have that job. um but like, I remember his name was Kyle, like he was just like blank, like he just didn't know. It was like bizarro world almost. It was like this, like just totally just out of it, and when I say out of it, like shocked. um I got to see that, and it was just like, it's an eye opener, right? How like blessed and thankful and everything, like we take things for granted, going through. And so for you, you were running, you were working really hard, and then when you look back on it now, the pregnancy, if would you say that that could have actually saved your life?
For sure. Yeah. I think it's one of those things where I wouldn't have gone to the doctor, but because I was doing routine blood work, being pregnant and going into Sunnybrook, it was something they just happened to catch on one of my random visits, and they just called and said, "Hey, your platelets look kind of low." So the platelets are the part of your blood that clots. So you've got white blood cells, red blood cells, and then platelets. And my platelets were extremely low. They should be like 250 to 400, and they were down to 50. So they're like, but this happens sometimes in pregnancy. You should come in. They, they booked me in with the hematologist to do more tests. And by the time I got to her, a couple of weeks later, they were down to 15, 1.5. So if I went into labor, I would have, I wouldn't have been able to have, I would have bled out for sure. So, and luckily I was able to get a good doctor, a hematologist who was curious enough to go, you know what, this
Mm,
doesn't look like cancer, but let me do more tests, because they basically caught it as it was happening. Um, and just a few weeks later, it would have been much worse. But that actually wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was doing it while being a brand new mother, and not being able to go home. That part makes me a little bit emotional. Sorry. But I think the doctor essentially gave us two options. I say us because my husband was like right in there, and here we are with this newborn. They're like, okay, so you've got a bit of a stubborn one. You're going to have to do chemo for 2 years with a really high chance of it coming back. Or you could do a bone marrow transplant. You'll get all new blood. We have to essentially kill you to get you to the point where your body can accept the new blood. And then you could die from the transplant, but it's very likely that you're good, like it won't come back. So obviously, I went with the transplant option, the hardest option, but with the best outcome. And I'll tell you, like that experience was pretty horrific in comparison, but it had to be done. I definitely, I think that's the part where I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to, like I'm too busy for this. I don't have time for to be
Yeah.
sick right now. Like
Yeah.
who has time for this? I was just frustrated that I had to get to the other side. Um, but getting to the other side was definitely the hardest part. Yeah.
And so you have as a 9, 3, and 1 year old.
Yeah.
So was this like within the last year, or was it the 3-year-old, or
It
like
was my
what?
9-year-old.
It
Yeah.
was your 9-year-old. So okay.
Yeah.
How is this? And so as a boy or girl, they're
So
your oldest?
yes, a boy.
A
Yeah.
boy.
My
So
son.
you probably like that boy coming along, like and finding that out in time. There's some miracles that came up along the way. Uh,
Definitely.
how has that changed your perspective going through a, that I could only imagine, right? And you had to make a decision that taking that second option, you might not wake up, right? From that was like a real option. That was a real possibility with the bone
Yeah.
marrow, right? That you said they essentially have to kill you for your blood to be able to accept, like your body built to accept it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Has that changed your perspective at all in life, and how you operate on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. And I think it didn't come all at once. Like it kind of evolved. I think it took me, and I've actually in speaking to a lot of people that go through traumatic events in their life, I find that it's similar. And a lot of the experiences, it's you watch movies and you think when something like that happens that you're just going to have this epiphany on that day of like, okay, now I'm going to lead my life like this. But it was an evolution of
Yeah.
first trying to get through it, then trying to come to terms with what just happened. And then there's a lot of survivor's guilt too. If you know other people who have gone through it and didn't make it to the other side. Um, but then there's that part where you have to actually build yourself back up again. Because when you go through chemo and radiation, you lose all your hair. They pump you up with medications, including steroids. So when I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. And luckily, I had a great husband. But if somebody had to do that and a great family too, I should say, my family was very helpful, supportive. There's a lot of people that don't have that, and it takes time to sort of get your mojo back.
Mm.
Like I wasn't who I was before all of that happened. Not only was I pregnant at the time and a new mother, but nothing looked the same. So you do start to see the world in this different lens. And then also there's the element of like the grim reaper is kind of hovering over your shoulder all the time because it's so fresh and you're not sure if it's like you're just trying to like shake them off. So like per se. And so there's a lot of emotions there. There's a lot that you kind of have to overcome in addition to the physical stuff, but there's also like the mental strength of it and
Mm.
pushing through, trying to find who you are now after that entire experience. So it took me some time.
So there's a lot of agents out there listening, and maybe they haven't gone through like a health scare or health challenge that you've gone through, but confidence is a real challenge for them. Maybe they just have a fear of, talking to people, or maybe they had a bad experience and they're just, they're out there and they're just not picking up the phone. just name it. There's many different reasons why somebody wouldn't have confidence. And that's actually one of the big things that I see with new agents coming on is if you don't have confidence, the clients, they read that and they want to work with somebody that's confident and they're a market expert, right? So how did you build yourself back up? And what advice would you have for agents listening to be able to do that? Like mindset is so important for success. How'd you do it through your journey?
So I actually really took a deep dive into different books. I followed a bunch of different speakers. I sort of just had to get my head in the right space. I mean, while I was going through the process, I was very headstrong, although I hit some deep valleys for sure emotionally. I was almost obsessive in my mindset of like I was visualizing myself walking out of there. I was visualizing my business growing. I was visualizing my platelets going back up. Like I am always somebody who's manifesting and visualizing what needs to happen next. So that was consistent. And so when I needed to sort of get back to where I needed to be, and I started to set out some goals, I realized that, my strength, my physical appearance, there was certain things that were in my control and other things that weren't. Like I couldn't make my hair grow back any faster, um, necessarily, but I could buy a Peloton and start working out and start working on my flexibility and, start taking some time to, um, some gratitude journaling and different things that I had to proactively push myself to kind of do that work. And it took time. Like I don't think I was that kind during those years. I had too much to like focus on that I couldn't focus on anybody else. And I had to deal with my own emotions of the whole thing. And eventually I got back to a good place, great therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Like even my husband and I, like I'm pretty open about it. We also had to do some counseling together because like we just went through all of that as new parents. So there was a lot of work to be done. And I think too, that's what I mean, where it's like you see this huge path in front of you. And even as a new business owner, you're like, okay, I need to get to this level. And you think you can get there in 3 years, but it's okay if it takes 10
Mm. Yeah.
because it's stepping stones and you got to build that foundation and you got to get your head right,
Mm-hmm.
and slowly get to where you got to go. And
Yeah.
I think we all feel like this. Like I'm not even where I want to be yet. I've
Yeah.
got so much to do. I'm turning 40 this year. It's going to be 10 years this year that all of that happened. And in that time, I was pretty tenacious about trying to have two more kids, which they told me was impossible.
Oh, yeah.
But I was
You
like,
showed them.
I called the best fertility doctor in Toronto and I was like, okay, help me
Let's do
figure
this.
this out. So I've got two more girls now. And you know that as a woman in business, you have to kind of step back and then step back in and then step back out, step back in when you're having kids. So it takes time to get to where you want to go. And that is okay. I think I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, I am not exactly where I thought I would be, but I didn't account for all of that other stuff that's just happened.
Yeah, life throws curveballs sometimes.
Yes.
Uh, Earl Nightingale says that success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. That's one of his. Yeah, like people think that success is arriving at the destination, but what many successful people find is once they arrive there, they realize, oh, wait a sec. Like, okay, I got here. It's good for, you party for a night, or a lot of times you don't even party, just move on to the next one. But you realize it's like very short term. And so to me, it's like success is going after something. And that goes back to what Earl Nightingale says. It's like it's progressive in that approach. And so I think that if you ever do think that you've arrived, I think that, that's the beginning of the decline. It's like there's always that next thing. And if you don't set that next thing, and we see that with people that retire and they work their whole life, they're this whole freedom 55, 60, whatever, 5 or whatever the number is, getting to retirement and going laying at the beach is not It's maybe fun for a week, maybe two, but it gets bored. You can only drink so many margaritas and lay on the beach for so long, get so many burns in the sun and all whatnot. It's like you want to go after something else, right? And so I think for yourself there, that's I think you're on that path, and I think it's a very good one. Now, you had mentioned a couple speakers. Can you share what some of the main speakers were that helped you that uh, maybe the listeners can tap into?
So there's a Cheryl Sanders book that I read. I can't remember the name of it now. It's she wrote it after her husband suddenly passed away when they were on a trip to Mexico. That was a really good book at that time. I also so I don't know if you've heard of Brene Brown, but she's got some great books as well. So one of the big ones that I really dived into was Rising Strong. So I read that like in the thick of all of that. Well, no, not in the thick. I would say like 2017, 18 when I was coming out the other side. And I found that it gave me a lot of good perspective
Mm,
because I was running a business, I was a new mom, I had a ton of challenges in front of me, but I also was very conscious of what was my narrative going to look like and what's the story that I'm going to tell about myself and what's the story that I'm making up about myself too, because we create narratives that aren't necessarily true, good or for good and bad. And I think that book really helped me give myself a good perspective on where your head should be at if you're going to start rebuilding your life.
so good. Oh man, there's a couple of good things that you said in there. So visualizing and telling yourself stories. Actually, I did two videos on that. If you go to the Full Out Real Estate Agent on YouTube, on how successful agents think, and then victim versus victor stories that
Yes.
we tell
Yeah.
ourselves, right? And so that is so powerful what you just shared there and building up your identity and just being intentional about that, and then going to other resources and pulling in great data and great insights, and even with yourself going at having two more children, they're saying like, oh, it's impossible. Well, you went to the best, you had the best counsel, and so those lessons are so applicable to anybody listening out there. It's like you want to go to get wise counsel. You want to make sure that you're building your identity in the right way. You're visualizing for yourself. You visualize yourself walking out of there. You visualize yourself being, successful. You didn't have, start visualizing all the negative the negative possibilities, because you can go down a whole endless pit. Anybody can go down this pit of things, and so those things are so applicable to overall success. It's just taking action on this. And you had said this earlier, that you have a very you have an urgency to take action quickly, which is
Yes.
another key trait of top producers as well. So
It drives
you
my
shared a
husband
lot of really
crazy.
good insights.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it drives people a little bit nuts when they're around me because I'm like, come on, like let's go, like on to the
Yeah,
next thing.
yeah.
And my husband mostly because it's like, well, we needed that done like yesterday. But
Yeah.
I think it helps kind of build things a little quicker. But I also have to be very conscious of like how much time I'm spending in certain
Mhm.
areas of my life. I
Yeah.
don't give things the attention that I used to if they don't deserve my attention, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, you're being
Um,
intentional with your time.
for
Yeah.
sure. And I'm not perfect at it. Like, don't get me wrong. I will spiral down Instagram and build shopping carts in Amazon, and I have to kind of check myself
Yeah.
um, because it's not the best use of my time, and um, just sort of prioritizing that balance between everything, which we kind of talked about before.
Mhm.
Um, some days it's the focus is going to be more on my kids. Some days it's going to be more on my business, and some days it's going to be more on myself if I can squeeze that in. And I'm going to be the last on the list right now, but that's just the way it's got to be right now, especially while my kids are small, to make sure that I'm getting in that time. But to kind of go back to what you were saying, like mindset and action, like that having that action, like you can visualize whatever you want, but if you're not going to do anything about it,
Yeah.
then you're just fantasizing.
So good. That's
There
so true.
needs to be the actual action. And so I've always sort of been a doer, and I can't help myself but to just do. Like I have to just get the next thing done. Um, maybe to a fault. Like maybe my therapist will tell you, well, it's because of this, but I like that about myself, in being able to just move forward and get things done. It can hinder you too. Like I haven't always been the most empathetic person as a result of that, because I'm thinking, well, I will just figure that out, so you can figure that out. But we're not all built the same, and you have to be a little bit more understanding sometimes that, maybe people haven't gone through what you've gone through, or they don't see the world the way you do. And um yeah, I think becoming a parent has definitely given me a lot more empathy.
Well, I think having high standards, I was having a beer with a buddy one day and he was like, Mark, he's having some challenges with some team members. And he's like, Mark, maybe my standards are too high. And this guy's super successful. I'm like, it's like, one thing you definitely should not do is do not lower your standards. That's what made you successful. And that's what actually makes the world go round today, and what makes the best businesses. Like when you go in to any business and they're operating at a high standard, you better believe that whoever's running that has super high standards and they are hardcore about it. If you break the standard, you're going to hear about it. This is not like lovey-dovey. You can have a genuine love of people, but the standard is high. It's like 100-0, 100% responsibility, zero excuses. And if you get off on that, there needs to be an intensity, a focus, an intensity, we'll say approach, so that people understand that that's not the line to cross here. You can go anywhere else, but like here, the standard is high. And I think that people really like that. And sometimes you got to be, and this is my experience, but sometimes you got to be very direct, and sometimes it comes across as not super empathetic. But when there's bombs going off, there's a book called was it the Hard Things About Hard Things, I believe, by Ben Horowitz, who wrote it. And he said there's a CEO, there's a wartime CEO, and then a peacetime CEO. And so the peacetime CEO is like, super, it's all about relationships, and it's all about like everything is fine. But when you're in wartime and there's bombs going off all around you, sometimes you got to do really hard things and you got to move very quickly. But lowering the standards, in my experience, has never been the approach. And that's what's made you successful, is that you have done it. And I think that that's like a very attractive trait in when people are working alongside people like that, because A players love that. It's more the C players that they get offended, and that's okay, because then they can get repelled, and then you'll attract more A players. And that high standard is what provides excellent customer service, and that's what we're all going after here, right? The top agents are.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it on the head there too, where um if somebody is going to be working with somebody else, they want to be able to be inspired by what they're doing. So if you're not giving them that right, like if you're not in the right headspace, then you can't help others necessarily be in the
Mhm.
right headspace. And so it took me some time to get back to that. um, and I had to do a lot of work on myself, because when I was in a bad headspace, I was attracting the wrong people too into my life. And that's when I met probably the worst slew of relationships, that once I got back to a good place, went, wait a second, no, this is not like, it's like I was looking at the world through a foggy lens for a while there. And once I got the right glasses, it just looked different. So I think, you know, yeah, having the right headspace is important for sure, for yourself and everybody around you.
I like how you explain with the glasses there. You change your glasses out, and things just change. And I think perspective is so powerful, right? If you just change your lens, It's interesting that you have two, we'll say two sons were brought up. They're twins. They had the same father. Their father was a drunk and beat them all the time. And they grew up, and one became a drunk. And you asked him, why are you a drunk? Why are you, not a good family man? Why are you broke? Why? And it all came back to, well, if you had a father like mine, you would be the same way. Versus his brother that grew up multimillionaire, loves his family, great, father. And he said, and that same reporter went and asked him, why are you so successful? I was like, well, if you knew my father and you had that experience, you would do the same. And so it's the exact same scenario, but a different, what's called different glasses, using your reference there. And I think that's so powerful that we're in a market right now that many would look at and say like it's a horrible market, but you can flip the switch there and flip your lenses and say, you know what? This is a great time. This is a wonderful time. The interest rates, they in the past they were 18%. So this is like nothing.
I
Prices dropped
agree.
by 25%. This is phenomenal. Like I got to go tell everybody about this market to buy into, right? And it's the same exact, we'll call it the facts of what's happening in the world, but you just see it, the glass is half full or half empty. It's the same thing. It's a perspective change.
Yeah, I agree. And the media is always telling us that the sky is falling real estate wise. Like real estate sky is always falling. There's always something. There's always some sort of hesitation. Um, but if you just look at the graphs overall, the market goes like this, yes, but overall it goes up. So um, just let's go. Like I wish I
100%.
had more cash right now because we're about to start going back up again. So
Yeah,
there's a great opportunity for sure.
for sure. So can you share a little bit about how you were able to, when you went back to Royal LePage and even being at Zoocasa there, so the online lead generation, can you share a little bit about how that's been successful and how that works for the listeners out there?
Yeah. So when I first started selling real estate, I was on my own and then went over and started working with my colleague at scholarhood.ca. And so we were helping people find homes in top school districts. That site was rare at the time in that it had the school ratings and homes that were in that district. So everybody that went onto the site was looking for something in one of the top districts. So I had to get to know schools in the GTA very, very quickly. And we were working with people, a lot of them were new to Canada, who really just needed some guidance in what their budget was, and say they were like, here, I've got a 500K budget, or I've got $1 million budget, or $2 million budget, and I need to find the best home in the best school district. So um, being able to convert those people online was difficult. Like it generally, they've reached out to your site, but they've reached out to 10 other ones, and they've got 10 other agents. Like now there's so many sites like that. Sukasa eventually became that type of site as well. It wasn't originally when it was owned by Rogers. So we would get a lot of leads coming in. And if you're not quick enough, you're not you're not confident enough to have that conversation with them on the phone, it's almost like the lead just kind of spits you right out. Like they'll just go to the next person. So I had to get really good on the phone really quickly to be able to turn those leads into appointments. And even though there is a high ratio of lead slippage that you're not able to convert, just being able to handle that volume. And as I grew and evolved in the business, I was able to create a lot more systems. When I started working back on my own personal brand and came back to Royal LePage, I implemented Follow Up Boss, which is amazing for staying on top of leads. Created automations, um, and I've kind of evolved from that. And recently, I just implemented an AI program called Structurally AI, and the bot. Jess is my bot. She's the robot. She calls the leads and scrubs through those leads that maybe need some revival or haven't been able to contact them for a while. So there's like the stuff that's coming with AI now is so fascinating, and being able to stay on top of those leads. But I will tell you, like in my early days, um, one of my colleagues at Sucasa at the time, we were just hitting the phones all the time in the office, and making those calls and booking buyer consultations. And we calculated 1 week we were spending about 16 to 20 hours a week just hitting the phones. So like half of our job was like inside sales reps essentially. But it mattered so much, because I would work with anybody at that time in the GTA, whether their budget was 200,000 or 3 million. I had such a wide span of clients, and I was just so open to go anywhere. And now in my career, I'm trying to kind of keep it a little closer to home, but I can't, like my network is there. And so I built these good relationships with these people, and they bought that first property, and now they're upsizing to the next one, and now they're, upsizing to the
Mm.
the third one, and then they're going to downsize. And they're, that was a great way for me to start my business from somewhere. And I just made it work. It was better that I thought than knocking on doors, but somebody else might think knocking on doors is way better than that. So it depends on, you just got to pick something and run with it.
Got it. And so when you say fast, how fast is a fast response for an online lead like that?
I think if it's going to be you, then within 5 minutes, definitely. If it's going to be an automation, that system should reach out immediately, so that it's an immediate, like the system I have now, it's an immediate text, and then a phone call and an email, and then they stay on a campaign. It's highly unlikely they're going to reply to any of your emails. So you do have to call them.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we find with our inside sales that it's got to be quick, like 5 minutes or less. That's the mission, and the faster you can go, they're in that mind space at that time. Otherwise, you wait longer than that, and the kids are screaming. They have, dinners needs to be made, and they moved on, and
Yeah.
so you call them after, and it's like I forgot that I even did it. So if you can catch them in that time, that's so important.
So this is the cool thing about the AI that I implemented, because if they are sitting on their phone at midnight and they reach out about the listing, or whatever it is, the AI will respond to them immediately at that hour.
Mhm.
So there's like, because otherwise you can't respond to them if you're in bed. But
Yeah.
sometimes having that extra ability, um, I'm so fascinated to see how this is all going to evolve in AI, good and bad. But there's so many new tools we can use now that 10 years ago wasn't available.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that Gary Keller said that, and this is back a few years ago when everybody was concerned that technology was going to take over and real estate agents were all going to lose their jobs. And there was a lot of talk about it. And so I went to some of these events down in the US, and Swan Pool is actually, they call it a T360 event. And so they get all like the top team leaders and owners and kind of the more of the business side of it in real estate. And Gary Keller was up there and talking about it. And he said that it's not so much that technology is going to come in and change it. It's going to be the agents that are using technology, or in this case, it's AI. So AI and technology enabled agents, right? Versus they're the ones that are going to more so take the charge and take the lead. And so for the agents that aren't, like we'll say enrolling these types of tools and technology, they're going to have a major disadvantage moving forward.
Yeah.
And it's changing so fast now. I mean, ChatGPT is one thing; it's wonderful. We use it fairly regularly, but like this chatbot that you're talking about, structurally dot AI, that's what you're suggesting. I mean, there's text, phone call, like, and they sound real now, right? It's just like when you're listening, it's like, holy geez, like this is better than some people I've talked to on the on the real people on the phone, right?
It is. I mean, it's not perfect. But the company is pretty active in always improving it every day. So every day it's getting better and better. But it's quite good. I mean, I've yet to have somebody say, like on any of the calls, like, are you a robot? Like, are you a real person? Like, they can't really tell.
That's good. Now, agent that's out there and they say, you know what, I'd like to have more leads. what would you recommend for an agent that wants to generate more leads online in today's market? What would you recommend to them?
I think you've got to really do a dive into learning how to use Meta properly, like Facebook and Instagram ads. That now has evolved to one of my main sources because and it's harder now than it was at the beginning, but it's still quite cost effective to get a lot of impressions, a lot of views on your videos on your listings. I find doing videos really helps create a better reel, which will go further. And so when those leads come in, just having good systems to put them into directly into your CRM, like Zapier is a great connector for Facebook to Follow Up Boss, for example. So there's a lot of tools and systems. You kind of have to give yourself that little education on how to do it effectively. Or I know a lot of people hire some companies to do it. I never
Mm-hmm.
did. Well, I think I've tried before, but in the end, I just kind of did it myself. And now I have my marketing manager doing it. But it takes a lot of time. It's not actually that easy.
Mm-hmm.
It and even just like the terminology and stuff, if you don't have a background in marketing, it's you don't really understand what you're doing. So you know, get on YouTube and do some courses, or get on Meta and do some of their training videos and just like figure it out. But then be like, you can generate a ton of leads on Facebook and Instagram, but are you going to call them?
Yeah.
Like, there's step two, right? You can generate them, but then you got to call and convert, and just practicing scripts. And, if this is something that you want to do, you can definitely have a lot of success in it. I think people are afraid of online leads, because the conversion seems
Mm-hmm.
low, but I mean, it's a lead source if you're willing to get good at it.
Got it.
Definitely.
And are you seeing cost-effective lead spend on advertising videos, or do you have an offer of like free home evaluation, or is it more lead magnets, or where are you seeing success?
I, I'm just starting to dabble in those. I'm in the middle of reading $100 million leads.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've read it, by Alex. What's his last name again?
Hermosi.
Hermosi.
Yeah,
And yes, so I've got big plans for
yeah, very
2025.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, your background coming from Zucasa there, I think that gives you such a competitive advantage out there as well. And I think you nailed it. I mean, leads are one thing, but being able to convert them is significant, because you can double your leads, or you can double your lead to appointment conversion, or you can double your appointment to agreement conversion, or you can double your agreement to firm, or you can double your referral percentage as well, right? So I think a lot of times agents, leads are important, don't get me wrong, but there's steps along the way, and lead to appointment conversion. That's actually what you had shared there as well. You got to be able to call them and then properly follow up. And a lot of times these leads are like 6 months down the road from converting. So there's a patience element as well to it.
Yeah, and I actually just revamped my webpage. I'm about to do, or my website, I should say. I'm about to do a launch for that. But um, just incorporating the properties on my website through RealPage has been pretty cool. They've got a great platform. I mean, they're not paying me to say this, but you have like the solds and everything on there. So I'm excited to see how that goes. But what I've learned over the years is that when somebody reaches out about a property, often that's not the property they're going to end up purchasing. It's sort of a conversation starter is what it
Mm-hmm.
becomes, and being okay with that, and being able to, like, when I first started selling real estate, I was they were reaching out because of a property on the Zoocasa website or on the scholarhood.ca website. I would book a call, have a quick chat, but we'd book a coffee. We'd book that coffee before seeing the property. So I
Mm-hmm.
can squeeze in a buyer consultation, then take them to the property, hopefully book a few
Yeah.
more. And now I've built that relationship. So I think just like creating those systems along the way is important as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. The belly to belly appointment, just going out and showing a home and thinking they're going to just like you, is
No,
not a recipe for success. It's like
not at
booking a
all.
face to face where you can show your value. That's the mission. And by doing that, you're actually saving them, because they're doing all the work right now. They're calling agents, they're booking everything, they're coordinating back-to-back showings, and they could be running into a really bad agent too. So essentially, you're saving them if you're able to book that one-on-one consultation. And we call it like belly to belly idea. That's the business that we're in. And so that's a really good suggestion that you gave as well, to meet them before the showing. Um, but at some point, meeting them sooner than later, face to face, is a very good thing for conversion, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, these days Zoom is probably the more common one after the pandemic. But if you're not having that initial call, you're essentially planning to show them a house they're not going to buy anyway. Might as well show them some houses that they are going to buy after they see that one. So
You got it. Now, if an investor calls you today and they say, "Hey, listen," a real estate investor, and they say, "Hey, listen, I'd like to invest some funds into real estate right now." What challenges are you facing with that phone call now? Or like, what are you recommending to a real estate investor that would like to invest into real estate in today's market?
well, my first question is, how long are you planning to hold it?
Hmm.
Because
Oh,
depending on, sorry,
okay,
what was that?
yeah,
It cut
no,
out.
no, go ahead. Yeah, that's good. So you're asked that first question about length of hold period.
Oh yeah, because depending on what sort of strategy they want to use, if they're looking to buy short term or long term, like if somebody's calling me to do a flip on a condo right now, like it's a little soon for that. But if they're looking to purchase longer than 3 to 5 years, I usually call that the minimum that you should own it, but longer the better. Then yeah, like we're going to be able to ride out any inevitable ups and downs that are going to come in the market. I think I a lot of my clients that are investors are they want something to renovate, and because I've got a great background in that, I'm able to help them, guide them in that direction. I'm not a contractor, but I kind of am actually at this point, but um because we subcontract a lot of our trades for our renovations at this
Got it.
point. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I still, got to be cautious in the advice that I'm giving, and like, try and just give them the best advice I can in terms of guiding them on some of the projects that they'd want to take on. But it's there's a few different strategies you can use, but if you're buying long term, even on the shorter of the long term, you're going to have a much better path to appreciation. If you need cash flow monthly, then let's talk about multiplexes and more than 3 units, ideally, especially
Hmm.
if you're going to be in the GTA, because it's very difficult to cash flow on condos. But I mean, one of the other things I like to talk about is a PETA factor and your pain in the arse
Yeah.
factor. And depending on how high or low your PETA factor is, then you'll take more risk or less, or do more renos or less. So it's a pretty there's a lot of moving parts there for sure in trying to guide somebody in the right direction. But once I know all of those answers, then I could be like, all right, let's go over here.
Yeah, that's great. Very cool. All right. Well, this has been great. Time is flying by here with you, Chantel. So, are you ready for the rapid fire part of the conversation here?
Sure.
You're ready. All right. Here we go. We got 3 questions. First one is, what's your favorite book?
Um, Rising Strong by Brene Brown, but close second that I just read, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
Yeah, phenomenal book.
Yeah,
Phenomenal.
it inspired me to just hire the marketing manager I've hired.
Cool. And that's
Yeah,
working well for you?
so far so good.
So far, so good. There you go, guys. All right. Second question is, what are three words that people would best describe you as?
Um, I would say tenacious,
Hmm.
um, fun. I try to add a little bit of fun to everything, and probably a doer.
Yeah.
I just like to get things
Those
done.
are three good traits there to have in real estate, to be an agent there. Very good. All right. And final question, what advice would you give the listeners out there that maybe they're starting out in real estate, or they're listening and they've been in the business for many years and they want to elevate to the next level? What advice would you give them?
I think having the right mindset first and foremost is definitely most important. Educate yourself. If you want to be an expert in this niche or that niche or this area, then do the work, because mindset plus action is going to do the most for you. in
Mm.
this business.
Amazing. Well, this was very impactful discussion here, Chantel, and really appreciate you coming on the show. The listeners that are out there and they want to refer you business, so you're in the Toronto, maybe you could talk a little bit about your market and how they can best reach you if they want to send you a referral.
Yeah, so I'm mostly in Toronto, although I do some of the GTA. The focus is in Toronto, Midtown Toronto specifically. I live in the Davisville area, so I get a lot of repeat referrals in that area now too. So although online leads has always been a main source, I do a lot of repeat referral as well. So yeah, I mean, I would be happy to help other agents, clients. I do send a lot of referrals out as well, so would love to meet other agents in different areas and collaborate in making sure people find the best home or get the best price for their house.
Okay. And your website is?
So chantelcrisp.com, and or they can email at info@chantelcrispteam.com.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Chantel.
Thank
It was a real
you.
pleasure having a conversation with you.
Thank you so much.
Very cool, guys. Well, thanks for coming on the show here, guys, and listening in. If you like the show, go ahead and share and subscribe to the channel where we are building a community of full out real estate agents. And if you have anybody that's looking to buy or sell north of Toronto, so that's the Barrie and surrounding area, you can go ahead and send them to us. You can go on the channel here and click on, and we'd be happy to serve those buyers or sellers there as well, moving to that area. Have a great day, guys. I love you guys and keep on going full out.